According to study after study, working from home leads to more efficient workers, less staff turnover, higher quality work, and it's cheaper for the business and its workers. So why the f do so many companies want people back into the office?
The days of working from home are fading for more employees, now being called back to the office.
Before COVID-19, high-tech companies were already experimenting with the advantages of remote work. A peer-reviewed report from an unidentified NASDAQ-listed company ran a trial where half of their call center workforce was randomly selected to work from home and the other half would remain in the office. The group given the opportunity to work from home had higher customer satisfaction, took 13% more calls, and suffered 50% less staff attrition, which is a big issue for call centers which typically struggle with high staff turnover. A follow-up study done on workers in a wider selection of roles including finance, marketing, and software development had similar results. They compared staff working full-time from the office with staff working hybrid schedules from home and the office. That study found that hybrid workers were 8% more efficient at their jobs and had turnover rates 35% lower than staff working in the office full-time. If businesses want to get the most out of their workers, the results are clear. More work from home is more better. Working from home is also cheaper for the business. Companies that want all of their workers in the office will pay more for utilities like electricity, maintenance, security, and internet that workers would happily provide themselves if they were allowed to work from home. It's rare that companies turn down better results for less money, but in this case, there are 4 reasons that more are demanding their staff come back into the office. The first reason is that a lot of companies are not doing so well right now. Interest rates are high, investors are not throwing money around like they were in 2020, and companies need to make cuts. The easiest and largest ongoing expense for most companies are their employees. If a business is getting less work than usual, laying off staff is a prudent business decision. If a business can cut expenses at the same rate as lost revenue, then it may be able to maintain profits to keep the shareholders happy. If a business is making less revenue, then it also means there's less work to do, so it just won't need as many staff. The problem is that laying off staff signals to the market that the company is struggling, which can affect the share price, make it harder to generate new business, and make it harder to hire new staff in the future. Nobody wants to work for a company that lays off a lot of people on a whim, and customers don't want to work with a company that looks like it might go out of business. What companies really need is a way to get rid of staff without formally laying them off. Business leaders have already seen the studies, and they know that forcing people to work from the office leads to higher staff turnover, which in this case is exactly what they want.
But at some point, you've got to make a decision to say, look, this is our policy. You have to return to work and be okay with the idea that some employees may say, well, if that's the case, I just can't work for this company anymore.
Investment banks like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, which have seen declining revenue from less corporate deal activity, are forcing all of their staff to return to the office full-time. Their official communications stress the importance of face-to-face interactions with clients and coworkers. Senior investment bankers from both firms, who love to talk about how much harder they worked when they were analysts, accidentally said the quiet part out loud when journalists contacted them about their firm's decision to bring everybody back. A senior manager at Goldman declared to the Financial Times that Goldman does not want to hire people for whom the most important thing is how many days they have to spend in the office. At the moment, this plan could backfire for businesses. Unemployment is still low, and it's easy for high-performing employees to find a new job. So managers using this tactic need to be careful or they will be left with nothing but their worst employees. An easy way to get rid of staff without the bad publicity is just the first reason. So it's time to learn how money works to find out why you are going to be forced back into the office even if it makes no business sense. This week's lesson was sponsored by Blinkist. Blinkist is a handy app that simplifies the key ideas from thousands of nonfiction books and podcasts into 15-minute chunks. Get a ton of knowledge in less time. Blinkist isn't for replacing reading. It's there to give you a quick overview of a book before you dive in or a fast recap afterwards. You can use Blinkist to explore loads of topics whenever it suits you. If a title catches your eye, you can delve deeper by reading the whole book. I recently found a book on Blinkist called Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. It's about the difference between good leaders who can boost any team and bad ones who can suck the life out of a team. I was so intrigued by this concept that I decided to read more about it. It's from books like these that I often get video ideas. Blinkist makes your learning more efficient. With Blinkist Spaces, you can share a space with friends or family to recommend books to each other. Anyone in the space can access all of the books there, even without a Blinkist premium subscription. Blinkist has a ton of content that can help improve many areas of your life, like parenting, communication, and teamwork. It's a must-have tool for personal growth in our busy lives. Don't miss your chance to learn more and reach your full potential. Get a 7-day free trial and 25% off Blinkist annual premium subscription by going to Blinkist.com/howmanyworks. The second reason that companies want their staff back in the office, despite all the advantages that working from home offers, is that they are exposed to real estate that is becoming useless.
Everyone's saying, you gotta come back to the office now. It's just like, it's all just giant propaganda to keep the commercial real estate market up.
The value of office buildings has slumped as people shift to working from home, which is a problem for the companies that have risk exposure to that market. Around 30% of major public companies in America own the office building they are headquartered in. This real estate represents a major asset on the balance sheet for those companies. Apple Park in Cupertino costs $5 billion to construct, which is a major investment even for a company like Apple. Investors pay close attention to how efficiently companies utilize their assets. A big building that is sitting empty is not doing anything to return money to shareholders, so there is pressure on company leadership to sell these assets. The problem is company executives trying to sell an office building in today's market would likely take a significant loss on the estimated value listed on the balance sheet. This loss would be considered a bad look for the CEO when it's time for the board to decide their bonus. Instead of selling an asset that's not being used and realizing the loss, a better play for the CEO is to make sure the asset is being used. If an office is full, then company leadership can justify the capital tied up in a building as it offsets the rent they would have to pay if they didn't own the building. Most major companies do rent their offices, but that can actually put even more pressure on company leadership to get people back in the office. The average rental term for office space is much longer than the average rental term for a residential home. Office spaces require fit-outs to make them ready for the companies that will be occupying them. Office space is often rented as nothing more than an empty concrete shell, and the landlord and tenant will negotiate how the office will be built out to fit the needs of the company. The typical cost to fit out a high-rise office after the core of the building has been constructed is between $250 and $500 per square foot. If managers want their offices to look like the one in Suits, it will cost even more. Usually, the building owner pays for the fit-out, so they want to ensure their corporate tenant is going to pay rent for a long time, which is why office leases last much longer than residential leases. Companies that still have their leases from before COVID will be paying money every month for something they are not using, but can't get out of. A lot of company managers have decided if they are paying for it, they might as well use it, because the cost benefit of working from home disappears if the company is still paying for an office. According to a 2022 office space report on 247 companies conducted by Robin Poward found that only 11% of companies were fully utilizing their office space. 46% of the companies surveyed were using less than half of their available office space. And another 46% of companies surveyed said that they plan to reduce office space within the next year. But that is difficult with long-term leases. One of the only options left to a lot of companies is to default on their leases to open negotiation with the building's owner. Some perfectly healthy companies have started to do this to try and get rid of a major ongoing expense. Banks are another group with significant exposure to office buildings. 3.8% of Wells Fargo loans are secured against commercial office space. This represents $37 billion in loans, or roughly a quarter of the company's market cap. Banks are under pressure to make sure that offices remain the standard working environment, or they will need to do significant write-downs if defaults continue. The third reason that companies are pushing people to come back to the office is because the power that an office can give managers.
And a lot of that has to do with employers starting to pull back, starting to say, we are still hiring, but we want you on site. We want you in place.
Some managers don't actually have that much to do besides stand over their subordinates and look important. It's easy to fill a day with redundant tasks and micromanagement in an office, but it's harder to do it online. Senior managers at companies making the decision to bring people back to the office are also going to be more comfortable with work in person than work done online. The old soft skills of business, like a firm handshake and small talk with colleagues, are less relevant online. Senior managers in the penultimate years of their career have spent most of their lives learning how important these skills are, and for many of them, it's how they got to their level to begin with. Straight-laced, old-school business managers are being confronted with a new work culture of online team meetings sat in by someone in their bathrobe and a co-worker's cat. Professional office culture is something that managers use as a powerful tool for extracting the most out of their subordinates. People stay late at the office to get extra work done, in large part because they know sitting at their desk in the dark hours after everybody else has left is a good look and demonstrates to their superiors that they are willing to make sacrifices for their career. If, on the other hand, you are someone that works from home, you won't get nearly the same recognition for working on something after hours, because you are sitting around at home in either case anyway. A large motivator for upward career advancement in the past has been the perks that come with senior management in a corporate role. If you come into work every day and sit down at a shared desk in an open plan office that has no privacy, where you sit shoulder to shoulder with noisy colleagues, you would be willing to work extra hard for a promotion if the job gave you your own office with walls and enough room to stretch out without annoying your neighbors. According to studies by McKinsey, the Incentive Research Foundation, and Princeton, non-cash incentives have more of an impact on long-term work motivation than cash incentives. So even though we all say that we would just prefer the extra money, the science says we wouldn't. The research has presented 4 reasons why. The first reason is that non-cash incentives are easier to see. Every day you go into work, you will see an executive's private parking spot, their large office, and their personal assistant that fetches them coffee. If a company just paid that executive more money instead of offering them visible workplace perks, you would never see their big house or retirement savings, so you would be less career motivated. The second reason is that non-cash incentives are easier to talk about. If you get given your own corner office, it's easier to talk about than a large salary increase. Workers should talk about their salaries more, but there is still a taboo about it, which company management is more than happy to keep in place. So for now, people get to brag about their new office more than their big bonus. The third reason is that while people say they would prefer extra money, it quickly becomes their new normal and the higher income level becomes their new expectation. Do you remember what your salary was 10 years ago? Probably not, but you would probably remember where you worked. The fourth reason is that people just like recognition, and even small incentives like their face on the wall for Employee of the Month goes a long way. Most of these non-cash awards need some kind of physical presence to work, and working from home quickly makes a role far more transactional and easily comparable with another role where the worker will sit behind the same desk and work the same hours just for different money. Additionally, since most of these perks go to senior managers in a business, they are more likely to want to return to work themselves and make the same decisions for everyone else. According to a study of 10,000 workers in the summer of 2021, of executives who primarily worked completely remotely throughout the pandemic, 44% said they wanted to come back into the office every day. Just 17% of their employees said the same. It's nicer to go back to a comfortable office that you oversee than it is to go back to a shared desk that gets micromanaged. Managers are also just people, and they are more reactive to negative news than positive news. A manager is more likely to remember that one employee that played video games at home all day when they should have been working than they are to remember the hours saved by cutting out commutes for their entire team, leading to small incremental improvements. When surveyed, most managers believed that working from home had a negative impact on their team's output, even though the data suggested exactly the opposite. The use of employee monitoring software has increased by 66% in the fall of 2021, and even as workers return to the office, managers have remained on average more suspicious of their subordinates. Collecting employee information and getting rid of underperforming staff is one of the reasons that companies have become obsessed with data, but it's not the most profitable reason. To find out what is, go and watch my video on how they have turned your information into a $1 trillion bank account and how they are planning to cash it out. Also, if you like these videos and want to get them a day early completely free, you should subscribe to my new email newsletter, Compounded Daily, where I will be sharing business and finance insights so you can all keep on learning how money works.